May 23, 2021. Episode 4, No Honor Among Thieves. It is the 28th day of Kythorn. Time of flowers, beginning of summer. Weather forecast, clear, slightly warm day. Now that we were no longer in combat, we began to question the restrained bandit, but he provided us with very little. We stood around for a bit, discussing our next move. Thane was pretty exhausted from the fight and still wounded. So, he was reasonably cautious about moving on into the next room where we suspected Malik to be. I also would have appreciated a rest, because I had used the last of my prepared spells. But in the time it would take us to rest, it was likely that Malik would have either gotten away or found us. We ended up leaving the decision to Moose. Moose agreed to press on and we walked into the next room where Malik had been waiting for us. He attempted to barter with us, telling us if we left behind the items we had stolen from him, then he would allow us to live. Svend answered back by headbutting him in the face, and we proceeded to fight him. Kairax and Svend took the brunt of his attacks, while Thane and I worked on stealing the items he had at his belt using Mage Hand. I managed to take 2 healing potions from him and what I found out to be a potion of fire breath. Thane freed Malik of some of his throwing daggers, while Moose made to shoot him with her crossbow. Kairax managed to bind Malik with nature's wrath, and it was at this point he was willing to divulge some information, so we wouldn't kill him. Malik explained that he had heard about 3 gnomes being taken to the lair of the Hark. He let us know that the lair was located south of Zelbros, near Moor Edge. There, we would find a statue, and east of that, there was a warren where the lair was said to be. He also informed us that kidnapping seemed to be a new MO for his boss. That some strange things had been happening, with different people coming in and out of meetings with the Hark. And lastly, that the Hark appeared to be desperate. After he told us all of this, we discussed what we should do with him. Thane once again felt as though we would be better off killing him. I really didn't want to do that. The rest of us settled on turning him in to the authorities, so we tied him up and took him out of the cave. We made our way back to the horses and traveled towards Zelbros. On the way we ran into some of the Lord's Alliance patrols and we handed Malik over to them. They asked us about the items he had stolen, but some of us chose to lie about possessing them, so we didn't end up handing them over. We let them know about the other 2 bandits we had left restrained in the cave, and where it was located. Then we proceeded to travel to Zelbros, choosing to set up camp for the night at last. The next day was the 29th of Kythorn. The weather was windy, slightly chilly for the time of year. We arrived in Zelbros, a simple farming town. There wasn't much to it, but Kairax was able to provide the horses with some feed. While in town, Moose tried on the cloak we had taken from Malik. It seemed to change to a wood texture and she used that as her chance to hide against a barrel and blend in with it. Kairax, Thane and Svend also tried the cloak on, but little changed in its appearance. It was most certainly magical, but unwilling to connect with any of us. It was as we were speaking about this, that the stress of my trial for flame rule returned to me. I still feel very unprepared for it. I'm running out of time to have something ready and I find it extra difficult to prepare while being on the road. Of course, Moose's parents are far more important though, so the sooner we can save them, the sooner I can return to Secomber and get back to work. The trial deals with contributing to the magic community, be it an expression of a spell or some impressive magic item. I thought we should try and send a message to Varlos of the Kyojo clan, as just kind of an update on our quest. Moose tried to get me to speak my letter into a crumbled up piece of paper, as it would repeat what I would say. I told her I'd prefer to just write it, because I write fast. The paper instead recorded us bickering. I began writing my letter, relaying everything we had done and learned, but I couldn't help but notice that both Thane and Svend were hovering over me as I did so. Just as I finished, Thane immediately spoke up and asked me, what if the letter were to get intercepted on the road? I'm going to be honest here. That wasn't something I ever thought about before. I asked him how would we let Varlos know what we were doing? He asked me if Varlos had even been expecting us to report back. I mean, I assumed so, but now I don't know. I handed my letter over to Svend, who was still glaring at it, and I asked him if he wanted to look it over as a way to, let me know what I should take out of it. Thane again tried to convince me that we shouldn't bother with sending anything, that it was too risky. Meanwhile, I realized that Svend was trying to sound out the first few words I had written down on the paper, and to my shock, that was when it hit me that he was, or is, illiterate. I responded by asking him if he didn't know how to read. I realize I shouldn't have done that in front of everyone, because then Thane was laughing, but I was just so clearly caught off guard by it, that I just kind of blurted out the question without thinking. Kairax made an attempt at cheering him up by letting him know that horses can't read either. Svend insisted he could read, but just not well. I don't think that's entirely true though. He could barely get through the first sentence of what I had written down. I felt bad for him though, so I offered to help him if he wanted, but he kind of just told me off. Something along the lines of, warriors don't need to be good at reading. So, I think he might be too embarrassed. And I kind of feel sorry for him, I guess. He is missing out on something that I think is so wonderful in life, by not being able to read. Maybe he will change his mind at some point. But I digress. I ended up handing my letter over to Thane, relying on his wisdom and experience, as this was something I knew very little about. He burned it up in his hand, and from there I left to entertain myself out of frustration. The others went about town. Svend was looking for a cleric with no luck. Kairax and Moose hit up some shops. Moose bought me some more stationery for my troubles. I thanked her and assured her it hadn't been necessary. Svend purchased a fancy turtle pipe, and so did Moose. She mentioned it was for her uncle. Kairax purchased a pot to send back to Secomber. After the shopping was done, we arrived at the local tavern. Some of us proceeded to drink. Too much actually. Moose was becoming anxious to find out more about her parents. She started asking some too obvious questions at the bar. I was able to calm her down. We got some soup, but I couldn't bring myself to eat it, as my mind went to the man I killed. We talked about birthdays and we realized Svend doesn't know his, so then Moose chose to assign him one. I guess the day we met and set out on our adventure is now Svend's birthday. The 25th of Kaithorn. We began to talk about what our next move was going to be, and what was going on. We wondered if the Hark had gotten involved with some higher powers somehow and was indebted to them, as Malik had mentioned him being desperate. We chose to use the cover of night to travel to the Hark's lair. So that's the plan. To wait for nightfall and then to leave to find the lair Malik told us about. Hopefully we are all sober enough by then to do so.